This podcast is a work of historical interpretation. While we strive for accuracy, some aspects of history are open to interpretation and debate. Thank you for listening. Welcome to Time Tellers. Dan is going to be absolutely annoying and pick the worst time possible to open up the candy. Welcome back to Time Tellers. Today, we journey into one of the most powerful and too often forgotten episodes in American history. The Bonus Army March in 1932.
Oh, boy.
Almost 100 years ago.
Yeah?
A march born not just from desperation, but from broken promises and a government that turned its back on its veterans in their hour of greatest need. Because 1932 would be during the Great Depression.
Oh.
In the aftermath of World War I, soldiers returned home expecting gratitude and a sense of stability. Unfortunately, they came back to America, so that was not to be. Instead, many found a country ill-prepared to support them. The World War Adjusted Compensation Act of 1924 promised bonuses, but payment was deferred until 1945.
Oh, boy.
Which is insane. 20 years. And for anybody who doesn't know what deferred means, that means delayed.
Really?
I mean...
That's what deferred means?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. As the Great Depression ravaged the nation, unemployment soared past 25%. We're at around, 4% right now? I can't remember. Last I checked, 4.2. I was pretty darn close. But that just shows how much more higher this was at 25%. Banks collapsed, families lost homes, and hunger spread throughout the land. Veterans unable to find work or provide for their families faced starvation. Veterans unable to find work or provide for their families faced starvation while the promised bonuses sat locked behind government deadlines. Because again, they weren't supposed to get them until 1945, which of course they could not know that World War II came along. But this would be after World War II. Well, the year it ended. Amidst this desperation, a spark of organization emerged. The Bonus Army was born. In 1924, Congress passed the World War Adjustment Compensation Act for the World War I veterans and making those bonuses payable in 1925. However, due to the 1929 stock market crash, veterans increasingly found themselves unemployed, impoverished, and desperate for work, like millions of other Americans. Unable to wait another 13 years, the veterans began to advocate fiercely for immediate payment. That's not 13 years, though. Let me do the math. Hold on a second.
Math is hard.
1929 to 1939 is 10 years. That's 16 years, not 13. Okay. In 1931, veterans nationwide began mobilizing through veterans organizations, communicating with one another through newspapers, pamphlets, and local meetings. For example, in Portland, Oregon, a veteran named Walter W. Waters, WWW, not even kidding, emerged as a central figure, galvanizing his fellow veterans into collective action. Waters and his group organized a peaceful but determined march across the country to Washington, D.C., gathering more veterans along the route. From his memoir, quote, "We had fought bravely overseas. Now we desperately fought at home. The sense of betrayal was overwhelming, and we needed to act or perish," unquote. So they made camp outside of Washington, D.C., They established their Hooverville along the Anacostia River. Hoovervilles were commonly named, they were named that to kind of make fun of and blame President Hoover for the Great Depression.
Hooverville.
Yep.
And it must have sucked.
Vacuum joke. Got it. Despite their desperate conditions...
Despite?
Shut up. I don't feel good. Despite their desperate conditions, the veterans built a remarkably structured community. Tents and shacks made from salvage wood and scrap metal, communal kitchens where donated food was rationed, even makeshift libraries and schools for their children. There was an oral history done in 1932, and one of the men who talked about it was named Jim Tierney. He stated, quote, "It was tough, but there was camaraderie. We built what we needed from scraps and shared every crumb," unquote. FBI surveillance reports reflected growing paranoia in Washington. July 1932 memo reads, "Concerns are raised regarding communist elements infiltrating veterans groups, potentially inciting violence and rebellion against established authority." It's always the communist. Our country always blames the communist
Should they
or
not?
socialist. Most people don't know the difference. Despite this suspicion, most marchers were peaceful, disciplined, and determined. The bonus bill, formerly known as the Wright-Patman Bill, sought immediate cash payments to the veterans. It passed the House, but died in the Senate on June 17, 1932. Joe McGuire wrote in a personal letter in 1932 about this, and he wrote, "We sat quietly hoping they'd understand our sacrifice. When the news came, the silence was deafening. We felt abandoned." Because here, they could have gotten immediate payment. The House okayed it. The Senate said no. The New York Times editorialized this on June 18, 1932. "While we sympathize deeply with the plight of our veterans, immediate payment of these bonuses risk setting a dangerous financial precedent and could escalate public unrest at an already fragile time." What a bunch of baloney.
Yeah.
The veterans refused to leave. They continued their vigil, hoping for justice. I believe they were visible. The camp was visible from the White House. If I'm remembering correctly. At least the layout that it was in 1932. So on July 28th, 1932, violence erupted because, their violence is a thing.
Really?
I'm sorry. That was dumb.
You said it.
On July 28th, police attempted to forcibly remove veterans from a derelict building near Pennsylvania Avenue, which is, of course, where the White House is. Violence erupted and 2 veterans were shot and killed. President Hoover, fearing broader unrest, ordered the military to intervene, explicitly instructing restraint, that the military have restraint when dealing with former military. Makes sense. That's bad PR, right?
Yeah. Kind of like bombing the military as well, by the military.
Yeah.
Like in West Virginia, was it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So, enter somebody we should know pretty well from American history.
Alexander Hamilton.
Wrong century. Unless he became a vampire. General Douglas MacArthur, who will become very well known in World War II.
Oh, I thought we only talked about Winston Churchill.
No. Known for his fierce discipline and ambition, General Douglas MacArthur disregarded Hoover's orders, his restraint orders. Joined by another big name, Major George Patton. Patton himself. And supported by tanks, cavalry, and infantry armed with tear gas and bayonets. MacArthur launched a full-scale assault on the encampments. He was like, I need another war. Let's go after these guys, that aren't fed properly or have that much in terms of, weapons. Definitely not tanks or cavalry. Maybe the occasional gun. I don't know.
Maybe.
Maybe if they didn't sell it for food. I mean. Eyewitness testimony by John D. Joseph. Wow. He stated, "We saw the cavalry charge with sabers drawn, tanks rolling down the streets, and gas clouds filling the air. It was as though we were back on the battlefield in France. But these were our own troops attacking us." Joe Angelo, who had once saved Patton's life during World War I, was among the marchers that Patton then attacked.
That was nice of him.
That was really nice. Yeah. So he said this. He said, I saved his life, yet he pointed tanks at me. I couldn't believe it. President Hoover's private memorandum to MacArthur stated, quote, General MacArthur is instructed to clear the encampment area using minimal force, unquote. I don't think tanks is minimal. I mean, if you're bringing out the tanks, even World War I tanks, which was, of course, the height of technology then, that's not minimal.
No.
No. That's the opposite of minimal.
It's not overkill, though.
A little bit, I think. MacArthur ignored the directive, which seems like it should be a firing offense, but okay, I'm not military. Escalating the violence into a national disgrace. And, of course, this is 1932, so there are these things called photographs. Yep. There are photographs, there's headlines, there is literal smoke rising over Washington. Like, this is not going to be an easy cover-up. And Hoover was already deeply unpopular due to his handling of the Great Depression, or lack thereof any handling. He was very much laissez-faire, like, we'll just... It'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll take care of itself. The market will fix itself.
Yep. Alcohol's bad.
Yes, because this is during Prohibition. Or, 1932. No, I can't remember when they repealed it. Maybe that was 33. That was early
same time
30s.
frame.
Yeah. He saw his presidency collapse under the weight of public outrage. So we have some headlines here. And the big three. Washington Post. They say, Hoover orders army against veterans.
That's a good headline.
Yeah. Short, just very, piffy. New York Times. I kind of like this one. I mean, it's not good, but it says tanks drive out bonus army. Public outrage grows. They're very, very mad. The New York Times. And this is another good one. Chicago Tribune. President Hoover, silent amidst national anger. Yeah, he was known for that. He just didn't do anything. And, I mean, he did do things, but that was, like, the perception. Like, of course, who wins the election over Hoover? Do we remember?
Do we?
I do. Who is the president during the Great Depression for the majority of it?
My buddy.
Yes, FDR. Of course, Franklin D. Roosevelt capitalized on the nation's fury. He promised aggressive reforms, sweeping public work programs that would, of course, become the New Deal eventually, and compassion for America's struggling people. His landslide victory in November sealed Hoover's political fate. I'm not saying that MacArthur and Patton cost Hoover his presidency, but I'm not saying they didn't help cost him his presidency.
You're speculating.
Yes. I think there's a good argument to be made, although I think he was doomed. I mean, economic issues are like the number one killer for presidential, whether or not they deserve it or not. Because there's only so much one person can do, although Hoover basically did nothing and was like, it will figure itself out, at least in terms of economics. And it also takes time to catch up. Policies don't change overnight and things don't happen overnight, and it's cause and effect doesn't happen instantaneously. Of course, the bonus army was driven from their camps because, tanks and tear gas. And was probably very traumatic for them because, that this is before PTSD. Shell shock was talked about. That's what they would call what we had would be labeled PTSD.
That's because it just didn't exist yet.
Yeah. The shocking treatment of veterans would shape future policy debates. When World War II ended, President Roosevelt and Congress acted decisively. that's a little bit weird because President Roosevelt was already dead. But I think what I meant there is like with it ending, because the ending was in sight. So they wanted to act ahead of time so this doesn't happen again. In 1944, when Roosevelt was still alive, the Servicemen's Readjustment Act, better known as the GI Bill, was passed. Because we have to remember, like, we went in 1942 after Pearl Harbor, of course, in 41. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the same soldiers that went over in January of 1942 or whatever were there until August of 1945. Yeah, like they did come home, some of them. Yeah. So we had to figure out what to do with especially injured soldiers coming back home, right? The GI Bill.
Yeah.
The GI Bill offered returning veterans unprecedented benefits. This would be the boomers. Well, no, the boomers' parents, not the boomers. They're called the boomers because they come after World War II. Lord. So the boomers' parents are the ones that majorly benefited from the GI Bill. It provided tuition assistance, low-interest home loans, unemployment insurance, and career training. It helped launch America's post-war middle class that has since disappeared. I mean, there might be a little tiny bit. So they didn't even end up getting, I don't even know if they got it in 1945, but they definitely didn't get it in 1932 with that whole movement. It's crazy. 1944 Veterans Affairs Memorandum referenced the bonus army directly. It stated, lessons from the bonus march underline the imperative for comprehensive veteran support. Immediate post-service assistance is crucial to maintaining social stability and preventing civil unrest, unquote. And apparently we have forgotten that as a country. I don't know. That was 1944. I'm feisty today, apparently.
I can tell.
Not feeling so great. I'm feisty. And I don't mean people necessarily don't respect or honor veterans. I mean the government. That's who I'm pointing it at. My vitriol. The Bonus Army's march reminds us that the fight for justice can echo for generations. Their sacrifice not only forced the nation to confront its failures, but ultimately reshaped how we treat those who risk everything in service to their country. Okay, so I looked it up real quick because I was curious. 4 years later, so this whole thing happened in 1932. 4 years later, in 1936, veterans did get their bonus when Congress voted the money over President Franklin Roosevelt's veto, which I definitely did not know that he vetoed that. I wonder what his thought process was to veto that.
Eleanor must not have been there at that moment.
Maybe. It's got to be one of those things along with like the Japanese internment that was not good for his legacy. But the American soldiers who fought in World War I, they voted for adjusted compensation, like Congress voted for that, and it would have been $1.25 for each day served overseas, $1 for each day served in the States.
That's it. What's that for inflation?
I don't know what that would be considered for inflation. I mean,
$1 a day seems a little.
Well, these were bonuses. Like they got paid. This was bonus,
well,
like on top of getting paid. So if you think about like how much like the Radium Girls and stuff were getting paid at that time, and they got paid pretty well for that time period.
Yeah.
Like that's not.
Well, what was the actual salary for soldiers in World War I?
That's a good question.
Didn't know if that like dollar amount was even significant or what,
$30 a month, which comes out to, I mean, this is 2018, but comes out to about $550 a month in 2018, which that's pre-pandemic, so that's going to have shot up.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's nothing. So $1 a day, that's about another extra $30 if that was stateside, and $1.25 if they were overseas.
Yeah.
So Yeah, that's nothing. But his food, clothing, and things like soap, toothpaste were covered by the military. Of course. But yeah, that's just a private. I didn't look into more.
Underpaid.
Yeah, but let me see what the average income for... I was just trying to see what the average income is for, like, the average wage in 1950 was approximately annual salary. Yeah, annual salary was $687.
That's it?
Yep, 1915. So, yep.
Yeah, what's that today?
I don't know. You figure it out.
No, you figure it out.
That's math.
You're the teacher.
That's math. I don't teach math.
You're the teacher.
Fake. I don't know. But anyways, thank you for listening to Time Tellers. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode about the bonus army that really helped set the stage for future veterans' benefits, like the GI Bill, which has gone by many different various names and various other things that have happened after, like, say, Vietnam or the war in Iraq or the Persian Gulf War. But it is something that was very important. And had we not gotten hit with the Great Depression, they might have been A-okay to wait till 1945, which is still insane.
Yeah, they shouldn't have had to wait for...
Yeah. And just the fact that MacArthur and Patton thought it would be a good idea to literally fire on their countrymen and then disobey a direct order from Hoover, who was their commander-in-chief, and then somehow went on to both be huge names and heroes of World War II.
Yeah.
Go figure. I don't get that at all. But that's the military for you. I don't know much about it. I will not lie. But thank you for joining us. And until next time, remember, history lives through the voices of those who dared to speak or stand up to tanks.
And thank you for not introducing me.
I did. I talked about how you were opening up the candy annoyingly. Can't get mad at me. I did. Bye.
Wow, you slammed the thing shut.
Yep, I'm done.
What's your rush?